Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
Alright, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
He's become an arrogant blue chipper.
Joe Giammatteo.
Bartlett, you're an uncouth imbecile. Try loving somebody.
That is amazing. I made specific note of both of those lines. An uncouth imbecile. I am the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. But first, we got a new listener up in Alaska. How about that? Things finally thawed out enough for them to catch on to the craze that is Wrasslin Raw.
Took them long enough.
Yeah, so what that just leaves us with, Montana is the only state of no subscribers. So fucking Montana, get on it.
Jeez. I mean, I know they're like backwards up there, a little out of date. Not a lot of people, you know?
Yeah, not many people there. We could chalk it up to that. The fact that their population is 5. That's why we don't have any listeners there.
To anybody that might come across it, people of Montana, this podcast is about as solid as John Tester's buzz cut. You can set your watch to it. Your senator there. So, all right, let's move it along. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on February 9th, 1998. This Raw was recorded at the Roberts Municipal Stadium in Evansville, Indiana, and features Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, Michael Cole, and Kevin Oh My God Kelly on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. This started as a truly bizarre send-up of Sunny, dressed as Marilyn Monroe, singing a sultry rendition of Happy Birthday that Monroe originally sang for Kennedy, but in this case, this was directed to classy Freddie Blassie. I guess this was Freddie's 80th birthday, and they did make sure to have wind blowing up her skirt at the end there. And for the record, she looked damn good. That's never been Sunny's problem. We can list other problems, but Michael Cole's setup voiceovers, they continue to improve. Tonight, he was skillfully using alliteration alongside assertive articulation. I can do it too, Michael. We got a review of Shawn Michaels grinding that championship belt into Stone Cold Steve Austin's face at the end of last week's episode. It was repeated obnoxiously, "This is it, Austin. This is it, Austin. This is it, Austin," over and over again. And after the proper intro, we kicked it off right with the glass breaking and a huge crowd pop. Austin worked the corners, camera flashes exploded everywhere he went. There were excellent hard camera views of the crowd responding to his raised fists. There was an automatic Austin crowd chant. Fucking goosebumps. This place exploded off the hinges right off the bat. Austin was very upset about getting that belt rubbed in his face, and ultimately he challenged Shawn Michaels to come on down to the ring. Rather than do that, DX appeared up on the Titantron from a locker room somewhere in the building. Chyna, once again, looking especially good there. She had this, fucking death stare on her face. Shawn was very proud of punking Austin out last week and made sure to point out that Austin doesn't call the shots around here, Shawn Michaels does. But when asked for a reason to come out, Austin replied that Michaels needed to come out because Austin has the championship belt. Sure enough, Austin pulled the old switcheroo here somewhere along the lines. Michaels reached into his bag and pulled out a toy belt. Austin reached down to some kind of sack that he had there and pulled out the real one. And I loved Kevin Kelly saying that Austin had the real Megillah there in the ring. Love that word. And we'll pause it here, boys. My goodness, what a hot start. What a hot crowd. Ryan, what'd you think of how we started the night?
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. The moment Stone Cold came into the arena, the place came unglued. And I know that JR has called Stone Cold the rattlesnake before, but I think this may be the first time that he said, "And here comes the rattlesnake," like the moment that he comes through the entrance, because I'm pretty sure that line was in one of the old wrestling games that we used to use, so it's burnt into my skull. So I'm pretty sure about that. But after that, Shawn, I thought, did a decent job, did his normal hillish promo here. But when Stone Cold showed or said that he took the WWF belt, I laughed my ass off when Shawn pulled out that tiny little foam fake. It's like the one they sell at the concession stand. That was beautiful, and his reaction to it was perfect. And then Stone Cold says, I'll be here all night if you want your real one back. And another first that I'm pretty sure here is at the end, Stone Cold pauses to allow the crowd to say, because Stone Cold said so. And I don't remember that happening before this point. He's really starting to buy into the babyface role now when you do something like that. So great segment, I thought. And anytime a Raw starts off with the glass breaking, it's usually a good thing.
Yeah, I'll take it from there. Anytime you want to start Raw, it should start with Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Or DX. Anything within that feud is how you want to start every show until WrestleMania, pretty much. And this is a strong start. I thought Shawn Michaels cut a great heel promo here. I always love the classic move of, hey, get your ass out here, and then the heel shows up on the Titantron and doesn't come out. I always love that move. And Shawn peeled back the curtain a little bit, calling Steve the Ice Man.
Yeah.
That's what Steve said he based his character off of a little bit, so that was cool. Just great heel promo from Shawn Michaels, and made him look a lot stronger than last week, in my opinion, at the start of last week's show. I thought he looked a little weaker. So they're playing a little cat and mouse here, Austin and Michaels, and that's what you want to see before you head into WrestleMania.
Yeah, great setup.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Let's see if we can keep that going. Hot start, hot crowd. Let's take it to our first match of the night. Hot pink. Jeff Jarrett and Barry Windham. Wah, wah. Defeat the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, by disqualification in 5 minutes and 57 seconds, with Sonny as the guest ring announcer. Sonny came out first here, obviously, and by God, looking amazing once again. And not just the look, but the charisma. We've said it before many times. She just oozes it.
She looked like one of the Godfather's hoes before they even existed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She had that pink dress on.
Unfortunately, I also think that if you lick her arm, you'd probably catch a buzz.
Yeah.
Like licking a toad or something.
Or an STD.
Yeah. 1998 Sunny was not the best version. That's for sure.
Is there a best version? Look where she's at today.
Wasn't 98 the Heat Wave ECW event where she was just completely shit-faced?
Yeah. She looks like she put on like 30 pounds in water weight, flopping herself into the ring.
Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah.
Well, she's not flopping here, so
no,
this was nice.
No. Things were quite taut here. Unfortunately, though, she got cut off by music and entrances. You couldn't really hear her at all.
Well, that's not what she's here for.
Yeah, we don't want to hear her talk. We want to just look at her.
Barry Windham, he's still coming out in the cowboy outfit. Assless chaps, cowboy vest. The only thing is his hair is blonde and he's not wearing a hat anymore. It's ridiculous, especially compared to what he was saying to Bradshaw last week, you know? Windham looked like an out-of-gas Michael P.S. Hayes in this to me. Like, if you took Michael Hayes and just, like, really just winded the hell out of him. Blonde hair.
Who?
Michael P.S. Hayes.
No, who looks like who?
Windham.
Oh,
Or
okay.
Windham looks like Michael P.S. Hayes.
Right.
I
I got what you meant.
Yeah.
Or Francis from Pee-wee.
JR was talking about the NWA believing it's the superior organization, and it made me wonder if this was like an attempt maybe from the WF to have a dual response to the NWO. Like you have the attitude response with DX, but then like wasn't the NWO also throwing itself out there as like a alternative organization within WCW?
Yeah, like a takeover type thing.
Yeah, so now we have this, and it's, I don't know. That's it. That's all for my notes. That's the only thing interesting that I could think to pull out of this. Bradshaw came out to go after the NWA stable. That drew the DQ, and it was over. So I guess the match was serviceable in the ring. There was nothing really to complain about with the action, but still a pretty lame angle. Ryan, what'd you think of it?
I don't have a ton to add, sadly, because I've mentioned many times so far, I don't really care about the NWA. I'm sorry. I just don't know much about them, and to me, they don't have any heat with me because I don't care. And the LOD, I was happy to see them come in a year ago, but man, they've overstayed their welcome at this point. I don't really care for them either, and Bradshaw coming out at the end didn't add much to it outside of, I guess, they are still setting up things for the pay-per-view, so I'll give them a little bit of credit that they're trying to not lead into the pay-per-view completely blind on some of these matches, but the NWA takeover is a miss with me.
Yeah, I don't have much on the NWA stuff because obviously we all hate it, but the LOD, you're right, they've worn out their welcome a little bit. I think that the nostalgia has worn off at this point for us.
Definitely.
There are still some weird LOD chants from the crowd, but you have to wonder if those are even real or if they're piped in.
Yeah.
But these guys, I think if you guys remember, they become LOD 2000 with Sonny at some point, and I feel that's what they're building up to here, a repackaging, because Sonny looked pretty sad when they lost and they were showing that.
I didn't notice that. Good catch.
Yeah, I'm wondering, why hasn't LOD taken a little break yet at this point? You'd think their bodies would want it, just get a little more time off and then come back repackaged, but seems like they didn't really have much time off here. I'm guessing it's the pay window. They need to make some money, so we'll see what happens, but yeah, the nostalgia has worn off, unfortunately, and that's tough to see with a team like LOD that has been so great up to this point.
Yeah.
Those somas don't buy themselves, pal.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get the hell away from that. And the NWA thing is just it's anathema to everything that's going on. I don't understand what they were trying to go for with that. But anyway, after that, we got a backstage view of China wrangling DX's enraged response to Austin stealing the belt. We're informed here that she's the one that is going to go get the belt back for Shawn. And I love the way she was portrayed with this. She was the voice of reason in the room, but it was a silent voice. And that took us into our next match. Henry Godwin with Phineas defeats Pierre with Jacques by pinfall in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. The Quebecers came out carrying a slop bucket. I guess on Shotgun Saturday Night, the Godwins cost the Quebecers a victory against Los Boricuas. And I guess on that same episode, the Quebecers came after the Godwins and really couldn't care less about any of this fucking setup that happened on Shotgun Saturday Night. But there was some kind of rationale as to why we are where we're at here. Pierre does look like a fucking beast, though. I continue to be impressed with how much of a badass Pierre looks. And once things got going, this match, it ended up being pretty entertaining to me throughout just about all of it. There was a lot of beef in the ring, and they were working it well. The fact that this was a singles match helped, I think. The referee, he was on top of things, keeping interference to an absolute minimum. That is until the finish, which is where each side utilized a slop bucket to trade pins for the ultimate win. That was a little bit of a stretch, but the action leading up to it was good. So, guys, this might be just my cockeyed optimism bleeding through, but I was actually interested and entertained by this. And I'm not at all opposed to this angle continuing. Now, I do think it's going to depend on them getting rid of the slop bucket gimmick, because they're sharing it, and I don't even like it when the Godwins do it, let alone the Godwins and the fucking Quebecers. And it's also going to heavily depend on how things look once it transitions to being tag teams instead of singles, but overall, I am hopeful, and I liked this. Joe, what'd you think of this match?
I didn't necessarily like the match or the angle itself, but Pierre did impress me here. I think you're right. He does look like a badass, and PCO, as he's known now, recently he's been just a crazy son of a bitch, and it shows here back in 98. You can see a little bit of that. It's almost like he belongs in ECW instead of WWF here. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining to watch him work in this match and watch him work as just a regular guy. He's not wearing the fucking Mountie outfit or whatever it was they had before, and he just looks like a badass wrestler, and I like to see it. Michael Cole says the Godwins drew first blood, and I wish they would cut it out with that phrase. That's like the second or third week in a row we've heard that, and it makes me sick.
At first, I was a little worried we were going to have some type of slop bucket match that was going to be a gimmick with it when they both had it. I was a little worried. But when this match started, when it got into the actual match of it, I was pretty impressed. I thought these two big mastodons really faced off well with each other. And Pierre, at one point, this 280-pounder, does a very good-looking suicide bomb. It was impressive looking. And Henry, we've said many times before, Henry's a hell of a wrestler. It's just this Godwin's tag team that has really run its course at this point. So I was impressed with this match. If I was in the crowd, I would have came away happy. But if I'm going to nitpick something about it, at the end when Phineas decided to interrupt, the bucket hit was very weak. It was like he lightly tapped him on the head with the bucket. So for some stupid fucking reason, they showed a replay of it from another angle and it looked even slower. So that was stupid.
Well, he didn't want to kill him.
He didn't want to hurt him either, I guess. Overall, a pretty entertaining match, I thought.
It is a galvanized bucket, after all,
yes.
According to JR.
It's funny that Phineas is clearly becoming what's holding things back here in a lot of different ways. His biceps are still skinnier than my teenage daughter's arms. Yeah, he's shit in the ring most of the time. I really don't know how Jacques looks. It's been a while since we've had him in the ring to be able to give him a fair shake. If things go forward with this, I think the weak link is definitely going to be Phineas. All right, what's up next here? Chyna was backstage. She was going out to recruit some assistants, and she walked up to Los Boricuas, who had randomly set up a poker table in the middle of a big open empty room and were playing poker there. And here we finally got to hear Chyna's voice.
In Spanish.
She only spoke in Spanish. Yeah, still no English from her. And I thought that was really clever. I was really up on that. I was like, way to put a little twist in it. We still haven't heard the real Chyna. In the end, a deal was struck. It appeared that she hired Los Boricuas to reclaim the belt. After that, we had a brief Western Union rewind back to that moment at the end of Raw last week. This is it, Austin. This is it, Austin. This is it, Austin. Again, this was a really brief segment, but I did want to pause because not only do we get to hear Chyna's voice for the first time ever, but now the fucking Boricuas were in the mix. Joe, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, womp womp. Yeah, it was exciting to see Chyna go recruit to find the belt. That's a good angle. I like it a lot, but then it's the fucking Boricuas, so who cares right now? We'll get more of it later, so it'll improve later.
Pretty much the same here. I was glad to see Chyna. It was really cool to hear her voice finally, but unfortunately it's to go recruit Los Boricuas, so who gives a fuck?
All right, let's go to our next match. El Pantera and Brian Christopher defeat Taka Michinoku and Aguila by pinfall in 10 minutes and 29 seconds. Oof. According to some more footage from Shotgun Saturday Night, there has been some shenanigans. This was rife with deceit and duplicity in the light heavyweight division. And all led up to this. There was some kind of betrayal from Pantera. I don't know. Pantera looked absolutely ridiculous. It's like he looked at Peter Criss's kitty cat makeup and he was like, that's not enough. I need to do more. Aguila just looks like Psychosis from WCW, but in different colors. And this, at the start of it at least, was a badly telegraphed spot fest. That changed somewhat when Brian Christopher took over. Things slowed down, but that was an improvement, in my opinion. Taka and Brian looked good together. Pantera, though, he was looking like absolute shit throughout, I thought. It really sank into me watching this match. Ryan, a couple weeks ago, saying that Pantera looks like he's an older gentleman. I couldn't help but see that in this match. He looked like he was like 5 steps behind everybody throughout the whole thing. At one point, there was some kind of object. It was implied that there was brass knucks, but it didn't really look like it, that were over dramatically pulled out from Brian Christopher's tights. And Pantera ended up tucking them into his kitty cat mask, and then he hit Taka with a flying headbutt to get the pin and the win, which I thought was just fucking stupid. The dumb fuck ended up dropping the knucks, or whatever they were, right in front of the ref, who quickly had to pretend like he didn't see it. And that was the end of this. The best I can say is that they kept the Jerry's Kid bullshit to a minimum. So, Ryan, what'd you have on this match?
Well, they did do that. They didn't mention Jerry's Kid very often. But I was hoping that Brian Christopher was done with Taka Michinoku, and we were wrong. Here he is again, still being shoehorned in. And I thought when Brian Christopher got in the match, that is where it did pick up a little bit. Bartlett, unlike you, I didn't necessarily hate this ending. When Pantera put the knucks into his head, it was at least unique. The knucks falling out right in front of the ref, could have done without that. But I've never seen someone put brass knucks in their mask before and do a flying headbutt, so I didn't hate that, but the match was pretty weak.
Let alone a kitty cat mask.
I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of this match. I think it's pretty much tailored for a certain type of wrestling fan, I guess. And it's just, let's get all our shit in, if you will, type of match. So lots of phony looking shit going on because there's a lot of flipping and diving and catching and setting up and standing there waiting for a fucking headbutt. So yeah, it just, I don't know, it wasn't very good. I think that Taka can maybe work on the selling skills a little bit more than just always getting his shit in with whoever it is that he's wrestling. Until he starts to do that, I'm probably not really going to like his matches.
Yeah, I was left thinking about, like, the cruiserweight division in WCW after watching this, because I know that's what they were trying to go for with this, at least try to meet it, and it really got me thinking about the main differences between the two, and from a certain point of view, like, you could say that all of those amazing matches that, like, say, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero had, they were spot fests. They were very clearly plotted out ahead of time, well, for the most part, but the difference there was that even though they were spot fests, they were smooth. This wasn't smooth at all.
No.
Right.
And they never are.
Yeah, that fucking Aguila guy was botching all of his fancy flips before the match, like during his entrance.
I don't know, maybe it'll get better eventually. Here's hoping. So after a commercial break, we came back to lights going out and the sounds of hellfire and brimstone, and the crowd popping their asses off. Man, I love how fast they've gotten Kane over. I fucking love the way this story is playing out. And if you think about it, it's crazy. They've almost had Kane doing like the bare minimum in terms of screen time. Like, sure, he comes out almost every week, but he's only ever out for like 2-3 minutes. He maybe does a little bit of work and then goes away. He's had, what, 1 match so far? 2 matches max, I think.
Right? Or no?
Just the one against The Undertaker, right?
Well,
not The Undertaker.
yeah,
no,
Mankind.
Mankind, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. But even then, like, let's be generous and say 2 matches, he's as over as almost any other superstar with the minimum work. They've done just such a great fucking job of setting this up. I loved Paul Bearer calling the fire extinguisher that Vader grabbed a lethal weapon last week whenever Vader sprayed Kane in the face. But the red light here was having a really weird effect on the cameras. You couldn't see Paul Bearer's beautiful face, and I had a hard time making out what was going on. There was some kind of like lens distortion or something. I don't know what to call it, but it wasn't working for me, brother. Paul said that he was sick of hearing "it's time," so he pulled out a wall clock, handed it to Kane, and then Kane, with a gesture, magically set it on fire. And I fucking popped. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. That was pretty much the end of that segment. Paul Bearer blew out the clock fire, and they left. After that, we got a Triax Shoes Footwear Slam of the Week. I don't remember.
No, that was Foot Action.
Yeah,
Foot Action.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because it sounded like some porno site that Atlas would go to.
Oh my God.
Wow. Stiletto action. So was Triax maybe the brand, the model of the shoe? I don't know.
Yeah, it was like the name of the shoe.
But it was the Foot Action Slam of the Week.
And it was from Shotgun Saturday Night, where The Rock hit Tom Brady with a still unnamed rock bottom. And that looked good, but that rounded out the first hour of Monday Night Raw. So before we move on, Ryan, what'd you think of Kane and Paul Bearer here?
I love anytime Kane and Paul Bearer come out, and the way that JR started it, saying it's like the bowels of hell open up every time this hideous Paul Bearer and Kane come out. Great. Just, it can't go without saying again just how beautiful JR is. And I completely agree with Paul. I am sick and tired of hearing it's time. Kane holding this clock with Vader on it. He then lights it on fire, and I wanted to pop, but it was like a small sparkler was lit underneath it. And
you wanted it to explode.
Well, I wanted a little bit of more flame to it, and I think Paul Bearer wanted some more flame to it too, because he quickly blew it out and says he's going to extinguish Vader, so he worked it in there. But I think that fire was supposed to be a little bit more fierce than it was, but still a strong segment. I liked it.
You wanted an M80 in there.
Something.
Yeah, they didn't want to have to get that lethal weapon out again. The extinguisher. Yeah, you guys pointed out a couple great things that were said here. Nice quotes here from JR and Paul Bearer, and that was good. And Bartlett, your point with what a great job they've done with such limited time on screen. That's exactly how you should book an attraction like Kane, and that's what they're doing. So it's been really great. And like I mentioned last week or a couple weeks ago, Glenn Jacobs has done a really good job at just acting like a Michael Myers type character. Mm-hmm. It just always looks really good on screen. A lot of this early Kane stuff, you would think, watching it back, like, is it really going to hold up as well as we remember? And it really does. It's really surprising.
Yeah, it does.
All right, so that rounded out the first hour, and we kicked off the second hour with our next match. The Nation of Domination. This is Farouk and The Rock with D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, and Mark Henry defeat Ken Shamrock and Chains with Skull, 8-Ball, and Ahmed Johnson at the outside by pinfall in 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Ken Shamrock had this really sad look of hopelessness on his face as he walked down to the ring, followed by the pile of shit that is his group affiliation right now. The Nation, though, they continue to look absolutely badass during their entrance. The Rock cut a great promo at the start of this. He gave a great people's eyebrow. He talked some great shit on the people of Evansville, Indiana, saying none of them were worthy of being cloned. And this is where JR said that he's an arrogant blue chipper. I had to note. Farouk at the start of this match looking great. He is just a solid motherfucker. Even when he is selling, like he looks like he is just rock fucking hard. And I love it. Of course, no surprise, Shamrock and The Rock, they both looked good too. And that is, of course, leaving out the fucking Pantene commercial that is Chains. He's the weak link in this chain. And, well, he looked like he was just lucky to be there in general. I really liked JR continuing to compare and contrast Farouk and The Rock, going back to their amateur bona fides there. There was a few little mentions of the growing tension between the two. And I loved the finish to this. Shamrock had the ankle lock on Farouk. A brawl broke out by the commentary table to distract the ref. Rock came in with a steel chair and fucking blasted Shamrock in the face with it, giving Farouk the pin and the win. They didn't clear the ring fast enough, though, because, well, Kenny snapped. As JR put it, he got that faraway look in his eye. He ended up body slamming referee Mike Chioda, too. But it didn't stop there. Chains came over to calm him down, and Kenny snapped on Chains, too, and I fucking popped. I loved it. His team ended up having to restrain him while he was fighting and punching all of them. Finally, Shamrock came back to himself and looked very contrite over what had happened. And I have to say, this is the first right thing they've done since saddling Shamrock with this bullshit team around him. I feel like him snapping on his teammates really helped Shamrock maintain that shine. It put him apart from the rest of the shitheads. It emphasized what makes him different than them. So I loved it. The icing on the cake here was the multiple replays of the chair shot and then the snapping on both Chains and Kyoto. So at first I was a little down on this match, but I ended up loving it. Joe, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, I think in the end, it really just highlighted that Ken Shamrock is the superstar here on this side of the team. And on the other side, I think something that doesn't get mentioned enough is how fortunate The Rock was to have Ron Simmons as a mentor type of person at the beginning of his career. Because like you said, Bartlett, Farouk is just... he's a beast. He's a great guy to have around, a young, arrogant blue chipper to help build them up. And that's cool to see. They're still just tickling our taint with that Farouk versus Rock feud, which I love. I love it. I love JR again mentioning the catch can abilities of
he fucking loves that word. He said it like 12 times just in this match.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, in the end, they're masking how shitty all of this is by highlighting Ken Shamrock and his snapping. I really came around on this because as soon as they entered, I was like, this sucks. But at the end, it's like, okay, you're giving us what we want to see. I like it.
Yeah, we're all three in agreement on this match, it seems. The real, and Bartlett, you used it and I put it in my notes too, the weak link here is Chains. And thankfully, he wasn't in the match all that much. Most of the action was Shamrock with Farouk or The Rock, and all of it was pretty damn good. Farouk and Shamrock, that was just two hard motherfuckers, because both of those guys don't pull many punches, but that's not to take away from what The Rock did when he got in there, because he's really coming into his own, especially that promo that he gave before the match started. Like, everyone wants to know what he thinks about genetic or human genetic cloning. And yeah, great line from him.
Such a product of the time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that put me back to
Dolly the sheep. Yeah.
Yep, Dolly the sheep reading in that, Scholastic Reader or something?
Yeah.
Weekly, Scholastic Weekly, or something like that. The best part, though, by far, was right after Shamrock got annihilated in the head with his chair. This was like not quite on the level of Mick Foley getting smashed by The Rock with a chair, but man, he swung for the fences with it. And then because of this concussion, I guess Shamrock must have thought he was back in the octagon again, like a UFC. He just snaps like a rabid animal.
His brains are scrambled.
It's just the scene, such a great scene of the whole team coming up on him like a dog clamped on to someone. They're just wrestling to get him off. And then he screams a couple times. The crowd loves it. I loved it. Fantastic. By far the best match of the night.
Yeah, agreed. And just think, the last time we had something even comparable to this is when Henry Godwin used to have to hold back Phineas during his donkey kick.
Gosh.
What an improvement.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the press conference going into WrestleMania that we had this past Thursday. Everybody was there. DX, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mike Tyson, and Vince McMahon. Vince was first at the podium. He was stating that Tyson is going to be there for the championship match as an enforcer, calling it, quote, somewhat of a guest referee capacity. End quotes. With no further explanation as to what exactly that means.
If you will.
Austin was up next. He called Shawn Michaels trash. That was great. Michaels was up after that, calling Austin Latrice Sprewell. I remember that name, but I didn't get this reference at all. Can either one of you guys explain this?
Yeah, Latrell Sprewell was the NBA player who choked his head coach during a game or a practice.
I remember
Okay.
that now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, I guess, right around this time when that happened.
Speaking of products of its time.
Yeah, PJ Carlissimo was the coach's name. I think they mentioned him
Okay.
too.
After that, Tyson was up. Once again, he called out Bruno Sammartino. I loved that. And really, I thought Tyson did a great job with his little spiel. Things devolved after that. The shit-talking started. And I fucking popped when Tyson called Austin an uncouth imbecile. That was such an amazing line. And then there was the predictable shoving match, as well as footage from multiple media outlets covering the event. And the final newspaper headline that they showed on the screen said, Tyson denies he's broke. After a commercial break, we came back to China blasting what looked like Harvey Whippleman through a door.
Yeah, it did.
For
I'm
Stone
pretty
Cold
sure
Steve
it
Austin.
was.
And her and the Bariquas ended up in the men's locker room. She found some other poor jobber, threw him into a locker, kicked a couple of bathroom stall doors open, and I guess the search will continue from there. And we'll pause it here. This was another great segment. I think they did a good job with the press conference. We got more of China talking here, though, this time in English. And I have to say, I didn't quite care for that. I said it before with the boob job, but it's more so now with China talking. It's like she's lost more of her mystique now that she's all of a sudden a chatterbox. Joe, what'd you think about this segment?
So the press conference, I think that the editing of the press conference was not the best. You could tell it was very cut up clips from it, and I thought they maybe could have edited that a little bit better, but I think it got the point across for the viewer. And the reason why they have these press conferences is to try to get some attention from outside of the wrestling world, and that's exactly what they got here. So mission accomplished with this press conference with Mike Tyson. And as far as China, I completely disagree with you. I think that I love seeing her hunting down people in the men's locker room and beating up on these pipsqueaks. She looks like a henchman in an action movie that's just on the prowl to hunt down the hero in an action movie type of thing. That's what they're going for here. And she just really looks like a badass doing that to me. And another thing that's like the Kane thing I said earlier, it's like, well, does this China stuff hold up still? And all of the China with DX stuff has held up just great so far, and I really enjoyed this.
So starting with the press conference, I thought that this was a great way to give us something new. We were getting a little bit tired of the replayed footage of the shove, and this was completely new. And I thought for the most part worked pretty well. But my favorite part of it was when they talked to Mike Tyson and he tells Stone Cold, "You're not a nice person. You can't function with people." It's funny him saying it, and especially who it's coming from.
Yeah.
Some guy who bites people's ears off, telling him that he can't get along with people and all he wants to do is hurt people. So I thought that was pretty great. Of course, it ended in a shoving match like this press conference should. So I thought this did everything it needed to. And Joe, like you said, it got press. So mission accomplished. And Joe, I am in your camp on the China stuff. I don't hate hearing her talk. I did love her staying quiet for so long, but she couldn't do it forever. We had to hear her speak at some point, and I think they built it up enough that I was ready to hear her talk, and then I popped my ass off when she shoved that little midget jobber into the fucking locker. He wasn't a midget, but he was shorter than her, so he was never going to see the fucking ring, not with Vince in charge.
Him and Handsome Harvey got their ass kicked.
Yeah, just to be clear, China on the hunt, I did love that. That is good shit. It's the talking. If they would have left it at her speaking in Spanish, I would be totally up on this. But I get what you're saying. She can't stay silent forever, but I don't know. They could have milked it a little bit longer, maybe.
I think she just looks like such a badass that I don't mind the talking. Yeah.
And speaking of someone talking and talking.
Yeah.
Do you want to just stay on China for a while for the next 7 minutes, or?
Yeah.
All right, let's get this out of the way. Our next match. Steve Blackman defeats Recon with Sniper by submission in 6 minutes and 59 seconds. Blackman did a blacklight stick display at the start of this. I can't remember what those sticks are called, but where you do like a
twirling routine.
Moves. Yeah.
With a twirling routine with a lightsaber is what it looked like.
Yeah.
Blacklight twirling routine.
Somehow he got off of the midnight bowling lanes and wound up.
You know what it reminds me of is Glacier from WCW did the same type of shit.
Yeah. Sub-Zero.
Yep.
I thought it looked okay for what it was, but what did not look okay was fucking Recon and Sniper coming out. So they really, really have a jobber feel to them now. They are so unbelievably cartoony with the outfits and the marching and the chanting cadence, and they just looked so fucking horrible. And just as I was typing the word horrible, the fucking Kurgan's music hit, and at least the Kurgan didn't come out, but the Jackyl started talking on a microphone, and you couldn't really see like from where or tell what was going on at first. But then a podium got lowered down from the ceiling. The Jackyl was on this podium. It was the same kind of rig that they used to lower the Stone Cold shithouse, the Crapper 316, down from the rafters. I felt it was equally fitting that these pulleys and levers were already used to lowering shit down from the ceiling. They were well suited for this task, and I fucking hated this. I couldn't pay attention to the match, and I wanted to see Steve Blackman, and the Jackyl just kept going the whole time. This was worse than a phone call match. 7 minutes of this bullshit, and the crowd were sitting down for this, by the way. Not a single person was on their feet. Not a single person was cheering, yelling, nothing. And we got multiple wide-angle crowd shots whenever they were trying to fit the Jackyl and the ring in at the same time. Zero crowd response. At one point, JR said, "We do have a match going on, by the way."
I felt him. Let's just put it that way. Saying that.
We missed spots in the ring because we were focusing on shithead. Commentary was barely able to get a word in to let us know that the submission happened. I think it was some kind of crossface or armbar. I'm not sure. And then after the match, the Jackyl got in the ring to yell at the losers and, of course, slap Recon, and this fizzled out. I fucking hated this. I don't understand why anyone thought it was a good idea. So if I hadn't have changed the channel on El Pantera, I sure as hell would have changed it with this bullshit. Ryan, what'd you think of this match?
At first, I was excited to see Steve Blackman because we haven't seen him a bunch in the ring, and what we have seen has been pretty promising so far. But the moment I heard the Truth Commission music, I knew things were going downhill. Then the fucking Kurgan music played, and this podium with this pile of shit on it coming down. This may be my most hated thing in at least the last year. I don't have the words for how much I fucking hated this because, like you stated, we couldn't pay attention to anything in the ring. And the finish of the match was, you said a crossface or an armbar? I don't think it was either
something
one of
like
those.
that.
It was something very unique, but whatever. The Kurgan, or not the Kurgan, the Jackyl was just talking over all of it, just blathering on and on, saying shit about intellectual intercourse, and I wanted to fucking stab myself in the brain by the end of this.
Your brain is scrambled.
It is. And by the end of it, JR, he said it perfectly about this segment. He said this segment was a very interesting piece of business. Yes, it was, JR.
Yeah, it's a huge waste of money and trying way too hard to get this cult leader gimmick over. We know it's going to fade away at some point, but this is another one of those things that they're just trying really hard over weeks to try to get over, and it's not. This is a bad idea. The whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, so he's talking during the whole match. Okay, he's still talking. He talked during the entire match, and it's immediately my low light. There's nothing that's going to beat this.
Yeah.
Be impossible.
To be my low light, it's impossible.
Yeah, and just so nobody out there is misunderstanding us, it was nonstop. Word after word after word for 7 minutes straight. He didn't pause to take a breath. Yeah. It was just this constant stream of shit pouring out of him. God.
It was bad.
All right, let's get away from that. So after that, the New Age Outlaws came out. They started talking about last week where they tossed Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie off the stage in that dumpster. They ended up bringing out another dumpster. They called it the Cactus Condominium. And they also brought up footage on the Titantron from last week of them pushing that dumpster off the edge of the stage there, and they were tearing up at the sight of it. And I did pop when Road Dogg said that we are going to reenact the disaster in its memory. I thought that was just great. So they took this dumpster and shoved it off the stage, and there were a couple of blow-up dolls in that dumpster to symbolize Cactus and Chainsaw. Me and the King both laughed out loud when Road Dogg said under his breath, "We'll take that one back to the room with us." Road Dogg was popping commentary throughout all of this. There were quite a few points where you could tell JR was holding back and the King was just outright laughing at them. This segment was a lot longer than I'm making it out to be. I don't want to quote every word, but it was very entertaining. After a commercial break, we came back to Chyna and the Bariquas in the back. Austin ended up catching them, caught the Bariquas in a room by chaining the door shut, and of course that pissed off Chyna quite a bit. So we'll pause it here. Like I said, I left out a lot from that New Age Outlaws skit, but overall, I thought this was a pretty great segment. Ryan, what'd you think of it?
I completely agree. This is a good way to keep the chucklehead action of the New Age Outlaws up to 11 here and keeping the crowd just hating them. They just talk about how they murdered or tried to murder Mankind and Cactus Jack. And I enjoyed when they reenacted the flight. They said it was Flight 666 coming down runway 69. That got a chuckle out of me. It did out of the 69 did out of the King. So the mummies in the dumpster, that was funny. Yeah, everything about this worked, and they did it by keeping it a little shorter than last week. The backstage with Los Bariquas and Stone Cold, I enjoyed that too. I loved Stone Cold waiting for them to go behind the door and then him sneaking up, throwing the chain and padlock on there. But what I loved the most was when Chyna found them. She tries to Hulk out and break the chain, but that doesn't work. So she just roid rages and kicks some cans that were sitting around. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I guess for anyone who didn't listen, last week was the famous dumpster fall with Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack, and surprisingly, they have not showed a million replays of that on tonight's Raw. Yeah, this was the only time it was mentioned at all on this episode the following week. So I don't know if they maybe got in trouble with the network or something, but I'm just shocked knowing WWF's track record with this kind of shit. There were not any replays of last week's accident. But so yeah, this was a funny segment. Nice follow-up to that. And thank you, Steve Austin, for locking up the Bariquas in a room where they cannot come down to the ring at all tonight. So that was much appreciated.
Hopefully they just left them there whenever they packed up the show to move on to the next city.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go now to our next match. Thrasher with Mosh defeats the artist formerly known as Goldust with Luna Vachon, Mark Marrow, and Sable by pinfall in 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Goldust was in his Marrowlin Dust outfit here again. He looked good, and Luna was looking pretty good with him. I liked Luna in this. JR said the group here was treating Sable like an intern. She's no Lewinsky. Speaking of a product of its times, my goodness.
Yeah, I feel like Vince was just screaming in JR's earpiece.
Yeah.
Say Lewinsky. Talk shit on Clinton, god damn it. The King said that he'd like to see Sable snap on Luna. And yeah, I agree. It would be funny to see Luna beat the ever-loving shit out of Sable. I would pay good money to see that. The match got going. The work in the ring here wasn't all that bad. You wouldn't have known it, though. The crowd was repeatedly calling for Sable and not really paying attention to what was happening. She did eventually come back out after getting kicked out by Marrow, and she did start shit with Luna. Sable even slapped Goldust when he tried to intervene. That's what gave Thrasher the opening to get the pin and the win. Sable even got one slap in on Luna before Marrow restrained Luna. Sable walked out, and I was left wondering just how humiliating this must have been for Luna to have to hold herself back and work this angle, because we all know that Luna Vachon would absolutely rip Sable to fucking shreds in a shoot fight. So I guess really just kudos to her for being as professional as she could possibly be while the cameras were rolling. Joe, I've really been enjoying Goldust and Luna, but mixing them up with Marrow and Sable has taken them down a peg or two in my eyes. What'd you think of this?
When this happened, before they started the match, I just thought, okay, something tells me that Sable might come back out here because she left pretty early when they told her to leave. And obviously the crowd is foaming at the mouth to get her to come back out here. So the angle itself with Sable, it makes sense that they would want to do it. It's what the crowd wants. But like you said, it's just not believable. Luna Vachon would absolutely murder Sable. So it doesn't make sense. And the other thing is, what exactly happened that Sable needed to come back out?
The crowd was calling for her.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, there was really nothing that happened that made her have to come back out and want to beat people up, unless it's just like, oh, I'm sick of their shit. But to me, that's something that should have happened in the back and not out in the ring area. So I don't know. It doesn't matter because it all made sense at the time because that's what the crowds wanted. They wanted to see Sable and her enormous boobs and nothing else really mattered. They can suspend their disbelief that Luna would destroy Sable because they just want to see Sable.
Yeah, that's pretty much the answer here is this entire segment is made for the crowd to see Sable because that's what they want. And sometimes you give the crowd what they want, regardless of maybe taking away focus from two wrestlers in the ring to focus on two implants outside of it. But the actual match between between Marilyn Dust and Thrasher wasn't bad, but the crowd continuously chanting for Sable, it ruins it. But one thing I did notice that Thrasher, Marilyn Dust, and Luna all have on the same pair of ripped up pantyhose. So that was interesting. They're all pulling them from the same wardrobe, I guess. The ending, just like you guys, I'm a little disappointed that Luna has to be humiliated like this just to put Sable over, but she's a professional. She does it, and we move on, I guess.
Yeah, well said. Let's move on. Backstage, DX were on their way to the ring, and with about 7 minutes left in the episode, it felt like we might get some resolution to that whole belt thing with Austin. Shawn Michaels launched into it. He was laying out some reasons to tune into the pay-per-view next week. But the bottom line here is that Austin wanted Michaels to come out to the ring and get the belt. Michaels said, "I'm here. Bring your ass on out." And Stone Cold did come out. He came out swinging that belt like he was in a strap match or like Chainsaw Charlie with a chainsaw. He cleared the ring with that. But then the New Age Outlaws ended up coming out too. But then the sound of a chainsaw kicked up. Speaking of... everybody was distracted by that, the chainsaw cutting up through the ring, Cactus coming out, and while they were distracted, Chyna ran over and grabbed the belt that Austin had dropped. After Cactus and Chainsaw were up through the ring, Owen Hart ran into the ring. He was dangerously close to that chainsaw being swung around. There was a brief scuffle. We got a great hard camera view of a stare down, and we faded to black. So this was a pretty standard go-home show ending, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They made this entertaining for the most part, and while I don't care about the 8-man tag match, they did make sure to get as much star power on our screens to close this out as they could, and that's usually not a bad thing. So, Joe, what'd you think of this segment and the way that Raw ended tonight?
Well, I actually don't like that this pay-per-view is even happening at all. I wish they would not have a pay-per-view in between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, because I don't want to see Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin, even though it's a 4-on-4. Like, I don't want to see them in the same match before WrestleMania. I don't want to see Kane take on Vader before he takes on The Undertaker, that type of stuff. So it's shitty that they even have this pay-per-view and they're giving us a really shitty match card for it. But this ending was pretty good for what they're building up to, even though I don't give a shit about this 4-on-4. It all makes sense and it all matches up because the Outlaws are feuding with Chainsaw and Cactus, Austin and Michaels and Owen and Try have a little feud going. So it all makes sense. It was a good ending. I feel like this pay-per-view kind of waters down WrestleMania a little bit.
Yeah, Joe, I'd completely agree with that. Actually, both of your points you're making here. One, that this, waters WrestleMania down, and two, that it, despite that, was a pretty entertaining ending to Raw and a go-home show for a pay-per-view. The best part for me that got the biggest pop was the chainsaw starting and then the mat getting cut open and Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie coming out from under the ring. I thought that was cool to see. Yeah, altogether, we got the schmoz ending that you typically get going into a pay-per-view. And Bartlett, I agree. I don't say that meaning that it's bad.
Yeah.
China grabbing the belt, too, was a nice touch.
Yeah.
That kind of put closure on that angle they were running all night.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's neat because we talked about it a few weeks ago, these stories that happen within the episode. And it's so cool to see them get started and finished within this 2 hour or so block, hour and a half on the clock. But yeah, just good shit, and good shit going into what is going to be ultimately a throwaway pay-per-view. But like I said, we faded to black. So let's take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you take that first?
Well, my highlight is going to all of the Stone Cold DX interaction tonight. From the beginning with Stone Cold coming out, telling he took the belt, all the way to the end with the schmoz ending. So that was all great highlight. Low light, we already talked about it. There's no way anything could pry it away from the fucking Jackyl and the fucking Truth Commission and that fucking podium, that fucking match. Low light.
Yeah, I'll just take it from that point. My low light is the fucking Jackyl. For my highlight, I'm going to go with somebody who overachieved tonight because he was saddled with the complete drizzling shits, and that is Ken Shamrock. I really think that he entertained us tonight with his snapping.
Yeah, I'm actually going to fall right in with you on this, Joe. Low light, Jackyl. Fuck him and everything about him. Highlight, Ken Shamrock snapping. It really helped Ken rise above the current situation he's in. He came out looking really good in that, and that's what he needed, I think. All right, so Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around February 9th, 1998 for us?
Yeah, well, the big news is, of course, still Mike Tyson. Dave Meltzer has a giant article with very few punctuation marks in the Observer about Mike Tyson and the press conference. I skimmed through it. I didn't see anything that we didn't already know, although I'm sad to report I don't think you guys are going to be hearing Don King say Vince McMahon anymore because Don King and Mike Tyson had a falling out. They have a business dispute that just started last week. So
I remember when that happened. I don't remember that it happened right in the middle of all of this.
Yeah, it happened very recently, so might not see Don King too much more here or at all. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Considering the source, it is Dave Meltzer, so we don't know. Undertaker was given some time off to heal up some injuries and to spend some time with his father, who is in poor health. So that is kind of why we haven't seen The Undertaker for a few weeks here. Not because he was burned alive, just in case anyone was wondering. I don't think this is going to happen, but Dave is pointing out that there are hints being dropped that Marlena might be back soon to feud with Goldust and Luna. I don't remember that ever happening, but again, we'll see what happens. That's the rumors that are going around. And that is all this week.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most titillating Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at In Your House 20, No Way Out of Texas, with matches featuring Kane, Bradshaw, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.